So we're going to just have a conversation. As Bruce was saying, Steve and I know each other from way back, really. I moved to the United States in 1998 to Boston University, and Steve was a colleague for many years there, and discovered that he also was a PhD student at Harvard with Bill Hutchison, a great historian of religion at Harvard, who actually invited me to the North American Religions Colloquium. So my first contact with Harvard was through Steve's thesis advisor. So we're just going to have a fairly free-flowing conversation about, I'm not sure what yet, but we'll
No one told me, so.
That's exactly. So Steve, you wrote this really terrific book, I think published around 2007, on religious literacy. And the first question I'd like to ask is just, what made you write that book? Obviously it was a very successful book in terms of influence and reach, but I'd also like to ask what kind of impact you think it's had, what kind of difference you think it's made over those, 6-year period.
Right. Well, I know at the beginning of the book I talk about my watching the Waco tragedy in Waco, Texas in 1993, where I was actually a graduate student at the time. And I remember watching that play out on television and talking to friends about it. And this was when this Branch Davidian small religious movement led by David Koresh, they had this apocalyptic view of the end of the world coming. They were really interested in the book of Revelation. He was at the time writing a series of commentaries on the 7 seals of the book of Revelation, but at the same time stockpiling weapons, and their area was basically, invaded, or however you want to say it, by the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And there was a standoff there. And there were dozens of kids and family members in this place. And I remember watching it as a graduate student and thinking that I could predict how it would play out. And I was talking to friends about it, that Koresh is drawing the government into this conflict, and he's getting them to play this role, which is the role that he believes the government plays in the book of Revelation, and he's trying to get them to attack him, and it's going to go up in flames. And I remember writing in the book and thinking at the time that I should call the FBI, but I was a graduate student, and this was before the internet, and it was sort of like, what's the phone number of the FBI? How do you call the FBI? Hi, I'd like to tell you what to do here, It didn't seem to make any sense. And yet, it played out exactly as I'm not a Bible scholar either, but I knew enough about apocalypticism and fundamentalism that I felt like I had a grasp on what was going on that was much better than what the FBI had in terms of what they were doing. And it really did play out exactly as I told my friends it was going to, and the FBI moved in, and flames, went up, and all these kids died. And so that struck me as I went to this issue of religious literacy as this moment in my life that was sort of death by religious illiteracy, where if the government had known more about fundamentalism and known more about apocalyptic interpretations of Christian scripture, that this might have been prevented. And so that was a moment for me. Another moment for me in terms of the book was moving from Atlanta, where I had taught, up to Boston University, and just noticing that my students really didn't understand all that much of what I was talking about. I would say Matthew, and they would be thinking, Matthew Perry of Friends, and I would say Luke, and they'd be thinking, Luke Perry of 90210 Beverly Hills. And so I just got this sense that there was a disconnect, and that's when I gave this religious literacy quiz that I think some people have seen, that was passed around, to just try to gauge my own students, and realizing and giving that what I thought was a very easy test. What are the 4 Gospels? What's the first book of the Bible? What's the name of the holy text of Islam? Just realizing how little they knew. And then looking into some studies and realizing these studies showed that Americans knew very little about religion. Most Americans couldn't name any of the Gospels. Most Americans couldn't name Genesis as the first book of the Bible. A lot of Americans thought that Joan of Arc was Noah's wife.
So is that not the case?
No. Good question. And so that's really what got me going. And then I started, as a historian, I was interested in how this all happened, because I knew that in the colonial early national period, people at least knew a lot about Christianity and the Bible. Didn't know much about Islam, so that's really what got me going. As far as the effects of the project, I think that's up in the air. I think there's been a shift in American culture since 9/11 of an awareness of the importance of religion, the power of religion as a public, good or evil, whatever it might be. But I think we still don't quite know what to do with addressing this problem of religious ignorance, where we have this country where it's one of the most religious countries on earth, and yet Americans know almost nothing about religion, very little about their own religions, and even less about the religions of other people. So I think it's a little bit up in the air about where it's all headed.
What do you think are the resistant factors in promoting greater religious literacy in this country? What stands in the way of doing something about this?
Well, that's good. A good question. I think one is inertia. That one of the things I advocated for in the book was for courses in the public schools, in high school level, about the Bible that would help us understand all the biblical language our politicians are using, and to see if the connections they're drawing between the Bible and their public policies make any sense, and then a world religions course that would help us understand what's going on in the world where religion is such a powerful force. And there, the feedback on that really, the criticism of that is a couple. One is it's unconstitutional, which, as we know, is false. But there's a fear that, the public schools are supposed to be kind of religion-free zones, that you shouldn't talk about religion. If you do, you're violating the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, even though the Supreme Court has repeatedly made a distinction between teaching religion, which you can't do in the public schools, and teaching about religion, which you can do. So I guess the distinction between preaching and teaching, we might say. I think that's a barrier. I think another is the emphasis on No Child Left Behind, and the sort of teaching to the standards in the public schools. It's really hard to carve out a space. What's the hour where you get this Bible course, or what's the hour where you get this world religions course? Is there going to be less math? Is there going to be less computer science? I think that's a resistance. And then I think another one is one that you have pointed out in some of your talks, which is this gap between secular intellectuals in America, who tend to think that religion doesn't matter and maybe religion is going away, and then just the sort of incorrigible religiosity around the world. And so I think there's a tendency among some to think, if we just wait long enough, this problem, this unseemly thing will kind of go away and we won't have to worry about it. I think that plays into it too.
Yeah. So you do make the point in your book that both the secular left, if you like, are nervous of this for the reasons that you've said, that it's an unseemly topic, or it's an irrational thing. But also on the religious right, there's a kind of resistance because the idea that maybe the wrong things will be taught, or it will be inadequately taught, or it will be subversively taught. If Bible is to be taught, then we ought to be doing it.
Right.
So, are those forces going to be shaken up in any way, or are these just really permanent stumbling blocks towards doing something?
Well, I feel, one reason why I proposed in my book that we should have world religions and Bible is because I thought that the Bible course is more attractive to the religious right? Because they're, Chuck Colson, for example, famous Watergate figure, and also evangelical and leader of the religious right in some ways. You know, he's very supportive of Bible courses in the public schools. He understands that they can't be taught like Sunday school classes. Mm-hmm. He's confident that if you teach the Bible, though, because the Bible is true, people will gravitate toward it and realize that it's true. So that even if it's taught in the sort of the wrong way, like in a secular sort of way, a way that's different from the church, he has a kind of confidence that that its truth is self-evident if you just read it. Mm-hmm. And I think this is pretty common among evangelicals in America, that they understand that it's not going to be a Bible class in the sense of a Bible study class or in the sense of a Sunday school class. And so they're on board with this. I mean, in terms of my book, I got a lot of positive feedback from evangelicals, you know, and I think they understood that the Bible course I was arguing for is not the kind of Bible course that would be taught in one of their mega churches. Mm-hmm. And then on the left, I think they're less interested in the Bible course and they're more interested in the world religions, right? Because that fits into their idea of multiculturalism, you know, cultural diversity, religious diversity. And the religious right is less interested in that because that seems to muddy the waters. It seems to kind of relativize Christianity. What do Christians get 1/5 of the course? Because there's 5 religions, they get 1/7 of the course if there's 7 religions, even though that's the one true religion. You know, so there's a little uncomfortableness there. But even there, I think the Christian right realizes that, you know, the world is a place where religion matters, and that message of religion mattering they like in the public schools. What the religious right really doesn't like is ignoring religion as if it doesn't matter. That annoys them. Right. And it annoys me too. Mm-hmm. So we have common cause there. Mm-hmm. So I feel that package works. Mm-hmm. I think if you are pushing just for a religion course, a Bible course, you're going to get more support on the Christian right than on the secular left. And if you're pushing just for a world religion course, you're going to get more support on the secular left than on the religious right. I was thinking there might be a sweet spot in terms of pushing for both. Yeah.
Do you think teachers could deliver that? Or, I mean, what kind of training would they need? Because obviously the temptation, or what people would be wary of, is that this would be proselytism through the back door in some way, and that teachers would abuse.
Right, and they have reason to worry about that, of course, right? Because right now there's teachers who are violating the First Amendment in the way they teach biology, right? Mm-hmm. So that happens. I think, I always said, first of all, you shouldn't teach these courses if you don't have teachers who are trained to teach them, right? So you shouldn't just take a physics professor and throw them in to teach world religions, nor should you just take the social studies professor necessarily to teach, have them do it. So, I think that the efforts at teacher training that we see at University of California at Chico and also at Harvard Divinity School, those are really important because you need to produce teachers who can teach these courses if you're gonna have them at the secondary school level. So that's important. I think the oversight issue, to me, I don't think it's as big of a problem as some people think, and this is why. I think that courses that are religion courses are going to get scrutiny. If you're teaching a world religions course in Alabama, or you're teaching a Bible course in Boston, there's going to be members of the school board, there's going to be parents who are saying, okay, I'm Jewish, my Jewish kids are going to the school, there's a Bible class, what's going on with the Bible class? Is this a Christian thing that's happening? There's going to be scrutiny around it. I think right now there's less scrutiny around, a U.S. history course where someone might be, playing fast and loose, turning it into a born-again Jesus course, or a Bible course, a biology course where they're doing, something around evolution that may not be kosher. I think that. I think there'd be more, you know what I mean? I think there'd be more scrutiny. So I'm less worried about that. But that said, if you did teach these courses in this high schools, you would have violators of the First Amendment. Yeah. And then I just hope you would have parents and ACLU people who would sue the school, and then the class would get fixed. That's how we do things here.
You're right. There is a double standard in these things. The religion is sometimes subjected to different standards in other disciplines where presuppositions and manipulating goes on.